explain me what is the difference between .NET Framework and .NET Core?
Okay, .NET Core is an open source which is developed completely from the scratch. So .NET Framework, which was supporting only for the Windows environment and the hosting part. Here in the .NET Core, it is like operating system, independent of operating system. We can host the project in not only on Windows. It is going to support Mac and Linux also. And it's pretty much like a console application which we used to have it in .NET Framework. So that's the reason we can find it as a start program and the one place where we could be able to the single place from where its application is going to get started. And it has additional features like it supports component model basis, like which we call it as a middleware, and we can have our own custom middleware section defined in .NET Core. And the other areas also, it's a common thing like dependency injections and all those things are which is already supported. But here it's .NET Core is also going to support that.
Okay. Can you explain me what is dependency injection?
Okay, dependency injection is like any object or any class which we have defined, and it is going to utilize external classes or external resources, and for completing that operation. And if it is creating its instances of it, or it's interacting to that, so single class alone is taking care of all these criteria, in which is going to in the upfront it's going to facing issues for refactoring or for unit testing or the loosely coupled part. So that's the reason whatever the classes requires externally, the dependent objects or dependent classes, everything we are going to inject that, or we are going to provide that either through constructor or through method parameters. So in this way we could able to inject it. So that's what we call it as a dependency injection. So all the dependents of the particular class will be provided by either by the constructor or from the input parameters. Okay. And also the other criteria is like the classes should be focusing on the abstract level, not on the implementation areas. For example, I have a class A and I am deriving class B, or their class B is taking dependency of class A. So in the future, if I'm directly inheriting the class A object, tomorrow if there is some changes in the class A object, so there will obviously be some impact on the class B. So to avoid that, we should not take the dependency of the implementation of class A. We should take the interface or the abstract level of class A, so that we are independent of implementation of class A. Tomorrow if there are changes in class A, we don't have to make any sort of changes in the class B. That's the reason we take interfaces. That's what we, instead of injecting the classes object, we inject the interface objects. I hope I made it clear.
Yeah. Okay. Any idea about as you told, like you don't have experience or knowledge on microservices, right?
Yeah, I know what actually it is, but personally I haven't had any opportunity to work on a real-time microservice project. So I agree, I understand that it is a opposite of a monolithic approach which we have been facing it, and like how we create a project and deploy that. So it's like a single flow, and tomorrow if there are some changes in the production, it's going to impact all the customers. For example, if I have developed a project and I have deployed that in the production and it's being used by multiple clients or the customers, and if there is some changes which is requested by a particular set of client, and when I'm going to make some changes to that, it might be impacting the other client's expectation or its criteria. So to avoid that, we have created this microservices where we deploy the project in multiple. There will be only one single server, but we will be dividing that into multiple containers which will be individually running towards it, and each container is going to provide the support to a different set of customers, so that it can be independent. Or if I'm making changes in one part of it, it's not going to impact the other areas. So high level of idea I have on the microservices, but technically I haven't worked on that.
Okay. Okay. Let me jump into technical
interface is something which we want to define some set of rules that needs to be followed by all the classes, deriving classes. So at that point of time, we use interface. We can also achieve the same with the abstract class. The only difference is in the interface, we are going to have the methods and the rules defined. There won't be any implementations. So we will be enforcing all the derived classes to whichever is inheriting this interface. We are enforcing the derived classes to make their own implementation for the rules or the methods which has been defined in the interface. But to add to the next level of it, the abstract class is something like it's a combination of it. Like you can have your rules defined in it. You can also have your basic implementations for the provided in the base classes. So that it's you can either go for the definition, so that enforcing the derived methods to implement it, or else you can define some generic methods already defined in the abstract class, so that the derived classes don't have to redefine it at every place. So that's the difference between abstract class and an interface.
Okay. What is polymorphism?
Polymorphism is the simple terms. It is like same name and with the different functionalities. So which we can achieve that in two ways, either on the runtime or on the compile time. And compile time is what we call it as the way how we achieve compile time polymorphism is using method overloading, where we can have the same method names defined and but with different input parameters, and we can define multiple methods here in this with the same name. And other one is runtime polymorphism, which we call it as method overriding. So the base classes, you can define some methods with the virtual keyword, and in the derived classes you can override the base classes method so as to have your own implementation or extend the implementation which is already defined in the base classes.
Okay. Can we have access modifier other than public in interface?
Interfaces, all the access specifiers, all the methods for the properties defined has to be public. Only then it can extend it. So we may not be having any other interface like private or other access specifiers. We won't be using that in interface.
What is the difference between read-only and constant?
Read-only, constant is something which we are going to define that, and it's not going to be modified. So at that place, if we want to define some properties or the parameters, fix it for that project, for that class, and you don't want to in the future, once it is defined, you don't want to use the same anywhere in the classes or the methods. At that point of time, you will be using constant. Read-only is the one which we define that method assign some value to the particular property, and you use it either in the you initialize the value either in the directly or the definition, or on the during the loading of the constructor. You can load the values of the read-only parameters. And the other thing is, like, other difference what I found is like constant is something which you can use it in your methods. Even inside the functions also you can call constants. And but read-only is something which is defined on the class level. Like in the properties, you will not be using read-only inside the function level. Did I answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are the different types of constructors we have?
Different types is one is a default constructor which is public without any input parameters, and apart from that we can have you look multiple parameters which are defined as a constructor, and also we can define the constructors for the on the base level also for the basic inherited class, like any parameters which is being sent as a for the constructor of the derived classes can also be called it for the initialization of the base class. Like you can have the colon, base, you can send the parameters to it. And apart from that, we can use the static constructor also along with the default basic public constructor. The static constructor is something like it is only going to be called one time. So whenever that static object or static class for which the constructor has been defined. And if you are using any property of that static class or the method of that static class once in a time, once at the starting point of time, at that point of time it's going to load it's going to call the static constructor, not every time. Like here in public constructor, every time you create an object, what is happen is like you are going to call the public constructor and all the things which is defined inside it. But static constructor is only one time. Once you call it for the first time only, it's going to be called. After that, throughout the application until the static constructor, the scope of the static class is present, it won't be called. So it is static constructor is generally used for loading the static property values.
What is private constructor?
Private constructor is we will not be loading that. We will be restricting the class to be if the class is having only one private constructor and it doesn't have public constructor, then we are restricting it the class to instance state or the object to be created.
Okay. What is singleton pattern?
Singleton is like having one factory level on the one major class, which is going to have only one instance created throughout the application, and all the derived classes or all the functionalities of it will be created from it. So throughout the life cycle of the application, you're going to create only one instance of the object, and this is the class which you are going to be on the super subclass, like or the major class. You would like to have it only one time. Like an example, like if we have some banking project or something, and there is one criteria like because there is we have some security on the transaction level, so probably we would like to have only one instance of it of the database to be created and utilize it across throughout the application of the banking project. So that is one example where we'll be creating only one instance of that class, which will be utilized throughout the application.
What are generics?
Generics are the ones which you would like to define a method or with some set of instructions or set of code, and would like to reuse that across other areas. Like you don't want to define some method and restricting with input parameters with some specific set of data types. You can use T data type, which is going to allow us to reuse the same method calling with the different data types. And also with generics, it's a bit faster because it's on the compile time only. You can understand like when you're going to use the generic, when you're going to call the generic method, at that time only you're going to define the data types. So it's a bit faster when compared to other criteria. And also you can restrict the data types. Like it's not like okay, you created a generic method of defining as a T and everybody can use it. No, you can also have something called generic constraints. So where we'll be defining like when you're going to define the generic class or generic object, there is also a probability in C# like where the supports which type of class. So in this way, you are going to define only which classes can use this generic method which you have created. We have used that in multiple areas. Mostly we have used it in while testing or in the web API, like where we are going to compare two set of classes, which is mostly on the entity level or on the model level classes. We used to compare properties. At the time, we have created one generic method, so it can take any entity class or it can take any model class, and we're going to pass that to this generic method and use it to compare the property values.
What is the difference between var and dynamic?
Var is an anonymous and not sure on that. Dynamic, I remember it is going to accept any data type object as the name implies. Like you can create a dynamic object and you don't have to typecast. For example, the dynamic some number equal to some 10, it's going to at that point of time it's going to take data type as integer, and next time you can take it as a dynamic some value equal to some string. It's going to change the data types. But var, I know it's an anonymous keyword, and it's going to Exactly, I don't know what's been used for, but I don't know exactly the difference between var and that. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, let me jump to the SQL Server. What is the difference between CTE and temporary table?
CTE.
No, what are the difference in using CTE and temp table?
I'm not sure what is CTE. Can you elaborate its expansion? Temp tables, I am aware of it, like when you're going to do some transactions and you do not want to create some tables, you would like to store some records for the completion of the transaction. During the transaction, you would like to store some records in for temporary for holding it or to run some cursor or do some set of operation. At that point of time, we will be creating temporary tables at the rate and we store them. As the name implies, during the transaction we create the temporary table, store the records, and once the transaction is completed, that's use of the temp tables is done. So generally for few set of records we will be using temp tables, which is a bit faster when compared to normal table. But sorry, I'm not aware of CTE, what you're telling.
What is the difference between stored procedure and function?
Stored procedure is something which you would like to do some set of operations, set of transactions, predefined transaction, and you would like to reuse that across multiple areas. The same way you can do it using user-defined functions. But the thing is, stored procedure you can pre-compile and you don't have to set, it's not mandatory to return some values, you can do some set of operations. And you can also return some scalar value, or you can return some table records. But user-defined functions are the ones which you would like to do some set of operations. But it's mandatory here in this case to return some value, some scalar value or some operation. And also stored procedures, that's the second difference. The first difference I told about the pre-compile part. The third one, what I see is like when in the select query or the query which you're going to write it on, you can call the user-defined function, but you can't use stored procedures while writing your query.
Whether you have done any performance optimization in SQL Server?
Performance optimization, we have used a SQL profiler, and we used to run. What we have to do is like whenever we come across some scenario of that or any scenario where the set of operation is being really time consuming, on the code layer we used to debug and identify what is the transaction being performed in the database which is taking on, either on the debugging side or on the logging mechanism. We used to identify the database which are being interacted, and once we come to database, we use a SQL profiler and we should run those set of transactions or the stored procedure or the operations which we should replicate the same in the SQL profiler, and we just need to identify what is the time being execution time, and any query which is taking more execution time, and we have to analyze that and see like how it can be it can be optimized. Either we go if it's a repeated one, if there's a normal search criteria, we go for the indexing part, or if it is something like huge records, it's being populated for that query, which are not unnecessary, which are not necessary either on the column level or on the record level. We used to segregate those tables and into multiple tables, so that only the required set of records are being populated. The other way around is we sometimes go for the views also, creating the views with the required set, so that next time instead of calling the direct tables, we just call that defined view for this operation, so that only the set of records is going to be called. In this way, we wish to optimize the query for the time being consumed for that operation. This is the thing which we have done normally.
Okay. Why we are having only one clustered index in a table?
Clustered index, as the definition implies, that it's going to sort physically the complete table. whereas non-clustered index is the one which is sorted logically, because only one way we can sort it on physical level. That is the reason we have only one cluster index, whereas non-clustered index you can have a number of non-clustered index on a table, because it's not the physical sorting, it was logical sorting.